Long ago, in a peaceful kingdom surrounded by rivers, forests, and golden fields, there lived a king named King Arin. King Arin was known as a fair and intelligent ruler. His palace stood high on a hill, shining under the sun with tall towers and marble walls. From the outside, the palace looked magnificent and powerful. But inside the palace, the king often felt something strange. He felt far away from his people. Every morning, ministers came to him with reports. "Your Majesty, the harvest is good this year. Your Majesty, the markets are full of goods. Your Majesty, the kingdom is peaceful." The reports always sounded perfect, but deep in his heart, the king wondered if they were truly telling the whole truth. One evening, as the sun slowly disappeared behind the mountains, King Arin decided to walk in the palace garden. The garden was quiet. Birds were flying back to their nests, and the cool wind moved through the trees. As the king walked toward the palace gate, he noticed one of the guards standing silently near the entrance. The guard stood straight and proud, holding his spear firmly. The king glanced at him for a moment. Then he suddenly stopped walking. The king looked again. Something about this guard felt strange. He slowly walked closer. The guard looked at the king, too. For a few seconds, both of them stood completely still. The king's eyes widened with surprise. The guard's eyes widened as well. They looked almost exactly the same. Their faces were similar. Their height was the same. Even their eyes and hair looked alike. It was as if they were twins. The king spoke first. "What is your name, young guard?" The guard quickly bowed. "Your Majesty, my name is Raman." The king studied Raman carefully. "This is unbelievable," the king said softly. "You look exactly like me." Raman looked nervous but replied politely, "Yes, Your Majesty, some soldiers have told me the same thing before." The king suddenly felt curious. He had an unusual idea forming in his mind. "Raman," the king said slowly, "have you ever walked freely through the palace halls?" Raman shook his head. "No, Your Majesty, guards are not allowed to enter many parts of the palace." The king smiled. "And I have never walked freely through the streets of my own kingdom." Raman looked confused. The king continued, "I only see the kingdom through reports and meetings." The king paused for a moment. Then he leaned closer and whispered something surprising. "What if we change places for one day?" Raman was shocked. "Your Majesty, that is impossible." But the king raised his hand calmly. "No one will know. We look the same. If we exchange clothes, people will believe you are the king." Raman was frightened. "But what if someone discovers the truth?" The king laughed softly. "Then both of us will be in trouble." For a moment, Raman thought carefully. He respected the king deeply, but the idea felt very dangerous. However, he also saw something in the king's eyes, curiosity and determination. Finally, Raman bowed. "If it will help Your Majesty understand the people better, I will help you." That night, when the palace became quiet and most people were sleeping, the king and Raman met in a private chamber. The king removed his royal robe. Raman removed his guard uniform. Soon they had completely changed places. Raman now wore the golden robes of the king. The real king wore the simple armor of a palace guard. When they looked at each other, they could hardly believe it. Even the king laughed. "If I did not know the truth, I would believe you were the king." The next morning, the great palace gates opened as usual. Raman walked through the royal halls pretending to be King Aaron. Servants bowed to him. Ministers greeted him. "Good morning, Your Majesty." Raman tried to act calm, but inside he was very nervous. Meanwhile, the real king walked out of the palace as a guard. For the first time in his life, he entered the city without royal protection. He walked through the busy marketplace. The streets were full of people. Merchants were selling fruits, bread, and cloth. Children were running and laughing. Farmers were bringing vegetables to sell. At first, the king felt excited, but soon he began to notice things he had never seen before. He saw an old farmer arguing with a merchant. "The taxes are too high," the farmer complained. "I can barely feed my family." The king's heart felt heavy. Later, he saw workers carrying heavy stones for construction. Their clothes were dirty, and they looked very tired. One worker sighed and said, "The palace grows bigger every year, but our lives stay the same." The king stopped walking. Those words hurt him deeply. For the first time, he realized that life in the kingdom was not as perfect as the ministers had described. Meanwhile, back in the palace, Raman was facing his own difficulties. Royal advisors were asking him difficult questions. "Your Majesty, should we increase the trade tax next month? Your Majesty, what should we do about the border dispute?" Raman tried to answer carefully, but he felt the weight of the crown. Being a king was much harder than he had imagined. By evening, both men had learned powerful lessons. The king had seen the struggles of his people. Raman had experienced the responsibility of ruling a kingdom. That night, they secretly met again. They changed back into their original clothes. The king looked at Raman with respect. "My friend," the king said, "today I learned more about my kingdom than in many years of sitting on the throne." Raman bowed. "And I learned how difficult it is to be a king." The next morning, King Aaron called his ministers together. "I have new orders," the king announced. "Reduce the taxes on farmers, improve food supplies for poor families, build shelters for workers." The ministers were surprised, but the people of the kingdom were very happy. Life slowly became better for everyone. A few days later, the king called Raman to the palace. "You helped me see the truth," the king said. "From today, you will not only be a guard." Raman looked confused. The king smiled. "You will become my royal advisor, because you understand both the palace and the people." Raman felt honored and grateful, and from that day forward, King Aaron ruled his kingdom with wisdom, kindness, and understanding, because he had once walked the streets like an ordinary man.